Hello, welcome to week one of the weekly waves. We are going to be going through a big roundup of all of the albums that came across to grace my ears over the past week, or the past 7 days roughly, depending on how much I get around to. Once we've got through the albums of this week, of course, next week we'll just be tracking everything from right now as I speak to you to this time again next week. And it's been a busy one. This week. I've been working from home a fair bit recently, and that's given me a lot of time to listen to all different kinds of albums, be productive work-wise while being productive in branching out, listening to more different albums. And this is a continuation of a mission that began back in 2019. I started the process of a playlist where my favourite song from every album that I'd listened to, I'd add it onto there just to track both every album I'd listened to and hopefully keep a hold of some good music going forward. Find ways to, delve into new stuff, delve into things I'd listened to before, and hopefully just have a really good, high quality playlist by the end of it. Now we are 5 plus years into the process, and we are currently sat at 2,850 albums listened to, and it's a very long playlist these days, very difficult to listen to. There's a lot of stuff you could shuffle and never find if you tried. It takes days and days to get through the playlist at this point, but what it did do is it spawned me to listen to as much new stuff as possible, always be on the lookout for new music, and that's something that I'm very appreciative of, and I feel has really helped me to expand out my musical horizons. And this is just a way to chronicle everything I'm listening to, hopefully give passing some recommendations to anyone who does listen, and give you a little rundown of the things that have been going on, as well as a little bit of my life sprinkled in there too, if anything is super relevant. And the way that I think is the best way to split this stuff out is going to change week by week, of course, as anything quality-based will. But we're going to have 3 sections. We're going to have the lowlights, going over some of the things that maybe just didn't work for me as well. Some of the bad stuff, some of the stuff that maybe was just a little bit disappointing, follow-on albums from previous albums, just anything that didn't quite tickle me the way I would have liked it to when I listened to it. And we have the much of a midness category, where we will be looking at just the things that were good. There's not much more to be said, or maybe there is some more stuff to be said. We will find out when we delve into the albums that fit into that category. And then to end off, we keep it on a high note. Highlights, the best stuff of the week, the things I'd strongly recommend for you guys to listen to. And along the way, as I mentioned, I will be giving on every song that I picked out from each album to make it onto the playlist. You can find the link to the playlist in the description. And please, no matter what I say about any of these albums, what do I know at the end of the day? I'm just a guy who listens to it. I couldn't replicate any of what the people put together who make any of this music. And I really don't want to come across like I'm tearing down anyone's artwork, because that's the last thing that's needed. It's just completely based on my personal reception to the music, and I hope you guys can appreciate that. And please give everything a go anyway, regardless of what I say, because what doesn't work for me may work for you, and vice versa. So this debut week, we have 16 albums to get through. They have conveniently enough split themselves out very nicely into 5 in the lowlights, 6 in the much of a midness, and 5 in the highlights, which just keep us nice and balanced for today. There are things in the much of a midness that could fit into either of the 2 categories, depending on how you feel when you listen. And I think this week, some of the albums in the much of a midness, maybe a lot of them are reflective of other releases by the same artists, things along those lines. The quality this week was very high, I've got to say, overall, and I hope that that's the way it stays going forward. I always try and take a much more positive view to the music that I listen to, because I love music at the end of the day. Even the stuff that doesn't do a lot for me, there's fun in listening to stuff that doesn't do a lot for you. I think a lot of fun to be had in that, and I'm sure that you guys will agree with that. Some of the worst songs that you'll ever listen to are the songs that stick with you the most, and I think it's always good to have an open mind when listening to anything, to be honest. So we're going to start off with what isn't the worst album of the week, because I will at the end assign worst album of the week and the best album of the week. And the first album that we're going to be looking at is The War on Drugs' Slave Ambient. This was released in the very early 2010s, I believe 2011. You'll have to forgive any mistakes I make today on any of this information on these albums. I've not done a ton of background search into a lot of it. This is very much a raw reaction type thing. Most of the albums I've listened to only once before, and it is very much based on the raw reaction to the first time listen. Every time you listen to something a second time, third time, fourth time, you get a little bit more from it. Maybe you could say it's an unfair way of judging albums, but to me it's the best way of getting across something to you where it can be like a real pure recommendation, because a lot of things, they don't hold your attention for a long time. They get a one-off opportunity, whether that's right or wrong, and that's definitely the case when it comes to the music in this Lowlights section, that the first impression wasn't super strong this week. So The War on Drugs, Slave Ambient, this was a band that I became aware of as Kurt Vile, who is one of my favourite musicians, was formerly a guitarist in, very involved with, and then began to somewhat leave it behind a little bit in terms of his involvement once his solo stuff started to take off. And The War on Drugs don't have a super strong track record for me anyway. The stuff I have come across, I've listened to before. I think this is the third of theirs that I've listened to. And to me, it really is a case of you could spin the globe, pick out any song in this track list, put it on, and you wouldn't be able to tell too much apart from the previous one. It's got a real stale sound to me that it's well played. They're very skillful musicians in The War on Drugs, and there's Kurt Vile involvements on this album. He hadn't moved on completely from it at this point, but I believe he played guitar on a couple of the songs, and maybe it's just my own perception. I knew the songs that he was part of going into listening to this, so when I was listening, I did have an eye out for when those songs popped up, and It's Your Destiny is, to me, the best song on this album. It just has that slightly stickier, more catchy sound to it. It's very airy. The whole album is very airy. So there's a lot of space in it. The synth is very like sort of bare the whole way through, and it's just disappointing. Once you get through the first few songs, just you kind of get that feeling that what you're listening to now is what you're going to be listening to for the next 40 minutes or so, and that's never something that I think does an album a lot of favours, unless what they're delivering is just super high quality, really good stuff from the beginning. And in the case of this album, I think there was a lot to be desired. Second album, and this is, you know what, we'll just get right out and say it. This was by far the most difficult listen this week, and it surprised me, because this album does come highly recommended in a lot of spaces, and that is Ultravox's Vienna. See, I think when you get back to this period of time and you come across bands like your Rushes, your very like highly technical bands. Ultravox aren't a highly technical band, I wouldn't say, but they have a couple of songs in this track list that they're long. They're 7 or so minutes, and there's nothing to justify the time. You're not blown away by the playing. You're not super hooked in by anything. And that's a real sin, I think, of albums of this time, of this sort of synth, almost like I'd say new wave sounding. Whether it was part of the new wave movement, I don't know, but on reflection, very much a new wave sounding album. It was tough to get through. It was very, very tough. But having said that, the reason that I was listening to it is the title track, Vienna, which is one of my favourite songs, full stop. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, when you listen to it, I think sometimes an album, when it has a real standout, if your title track is your big single and it's the song you're remembered for, it's not necessarily a kiss of death. But look, when I was looking into this album, it was described as a fluke I think on Wikipedia, it was described as a fluke, just given the quality of the rest of their output. I've not come across any other of Ultravox's music massively, but it was a real struggle. It was a struggle, this one, and it just wasn't what I needed to hear. We're gonna move on. Heinz have a new album, Viva Heinz. Of course, the best song from Vienna was, of course, Vienna, if that wasn't clear from my glowing praise. Heinz, Viva Heinz. Heinz are one of those bands. I think I've listened to all of Heinz's music since they came about, and they have they're good pop songwriters. I think if you're in a mood for real, I don't know, but I always hesitate to call something background music or music you shouldn't focus on, because I think that really minimises the work. But if you want something very easy listening in that sort of pop space, Heinz, I think this album isn't too bad for that, honestly. I sat there listening to it with my earphones and not doing anything else, really giving it full attention, and it felt a little bit repetitive to me. The vocals are good. I believe that they're Spanish. I think a couple of songs were actually sang in Spanish on this album too. It gives it an edge a little bit. You do get that added dimension of the way that the vocals are performed, and there's some real standouts in Heinz overall catalogue. I'll Be Your Man, I think it's called, was a song off one of their earlier albums, and I always loved that song. But in this case, I think Superstar was probably the one that grabbed me the most. It's a bit slightly longer, a little bit more developed. It's lo-fi stuff. It's like garagey pop, and I think this song was probably the most realised version of what they were going for. So yeah, I'd recommend giving Superstar a go. Now, I don't know if what I'm about to say is a hot take. It's something that's widely thought of. I don't know an awful lot about the reception of this next compilation that I listened to, but Kurt Cobain's Montage of Heck. I really didn't find a lot in this to justify listening to it. It's mostly made up of early demos from some of Nirvana's stuff, some well known, some not so well known. There's Something in the Way early versions on there, combined sort of like a medley version with a couple of other early ideas. It's just not something that I'm super into. I'm not super into lo-fi anyway. Overall, there are lo-fi amazing pieces of work, but I mean, look, this isn't a full release. Whether Kurt Cobain didn't release this himself, this was released far after his death, and I think when the artist doesn't release something themselves, they don't have a super vision for any of their music. I think, of course, it's going to feel detached. It's not an album listening experience. I don't think it was sequenced in any way to flow. But I just don't think the ideas here are really worth it. I mean, I don't think that just because a musician made successful music and makes successful music, because you do get releases of demo work and stuff by a lot of bands nowadays, that is worth listening to purely because it was made by successful musicians. I think Kurt Cobain was an amazing songwriter, great performer, really got across a lot of raw emotion in his work, through Nirvana, of course. But this compilation just didn't work for me very well as a listening experience, and the best song here I think is And I Love Her cover, Beatles cover, was excellent. It's very sad. I mean, if that's one of those songs that is on here that I do feel like may have got a release, it may have been something he was happy with, a nice cover of someone else's work, and it really changes the tone of the original. The original's just got such a warm, hopeful, romantic feeling to it. And this one, the way he performs it is just so stripped back and low key, and very controlled. But aside from this song, I really don't see an awful lot in here that's worth too much time, unfortunately. And the last one, what you may call my musical arch nemesis, is Idols, Joy as an Act of Resistance. This was the only Idols album I hadn't yet listened to as part of this. That's on the playlist. We've got through all of Idols now, so you may be thankful. Any of you Idols fans, may you be listening, that you will not have to hear me talk about Idols until they release more new music, which, I hope is pretty soon again. I think the Tank album was interesting, probably one of my favourite of their releases, for sure. But, this punkier stuff that they started off with, I've always had an issue with it. My fiance is a huge Idols fan, and I feel like there is a real authenticity problem with Idols that really I can't get past. To me, punk, the punk that I enjoy the most is, it's not necessarily pushing political ideology necessarily, and it's mostly American. Dead Kennedys, for example, were a very deeply political band. I love it. I absolutely love the Dead Kennedys. I don't dislike punk because it's political. There's a lot of amazing political punk, but the stuff I like to tend to gravitate more towards is your things like your Misfits and your more modern, like, hardcore punk stuff, where it's a bit of fun. I think Misfits are one of the best bands of all time, and of course, to compare Idols, a British contemporary punk band, to Misfits is stupid. I don't dislike Idols because they're not Misfits, but this stuff just does nothing for me at all. I'd heard the Never Fighter, A Man with a Perm song in the past. My friends used to find it funny. I think when did this come out? 2016 odd. We would have been 16 at the time, and they loved it. They loved the song title, and I just thought, what a load of absolute shite. As is the case now with this, it's not something that I can't understand why people like Idols. It just does nothing. So maybe give Love Song a listen. It's quite I still don't like it. I'm struggling to give it any recommendations on this to you. But yeah, that does conclude our Lowlights section. Ultravox Vienna, you take the worst album of the week. I'm sure that how will they sleep at night? How will they recover from this? Who knows? But yeah, Lowlights completed. Okay, much of a midness. We are so back. We're back. I'm sorry if my energy was drained by the end of that. Idols, we don't need Idols. We don't need them. Looks like, do you know what? I can tell you for a fact that one day I'll step on here and I'll say to you, listen, everyone, I went to go and see Idols in person and they blew me away. Their energetic live performance, it looks absolutely amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I watched the Glastonbury set, not at Glastonbury, of course, because I can never go to Glastonbury. It's a pipe dream. I'd love to, but it's just unachievable for me. Their set was fantastic. It was one of my favourite sets of the weekend. That was the first time that they showed me something where I was like, do you know what? I love this. That's the wrong way of putting it. Idols are a very respectable band. Okay, I'm not trying to talk down on Idols too much. It's entirely my preferences are not Idols. But it was the first time I watched something where I was like, wow, I really get this. It really looked like it suited that live setting. And look, to go back on what I said before, the political stuff that they put across was fantastic. I loved everything they did there. It was stuff that needed to be done at that time. Even though it was just a few months ago, it was really, really a good thing, what they did at that point. But look, my energy's been sapped. We've got a lot more albums to get through. I can't talk about Idols anymore, I'm sorry. Idols fans, I love you. Idols, I do not love you. Okay. Much of a midness. The first one, the brand new Nails album, Every Bridge Burning. Nails. I can describe my experience of listening to Nails. I love their first album. I absolutely love their first album. Maybe is it their first album? The other album, the one I've listened to. It's one of my favourite albums, honestly, ever put out. It's just so heavy. It just grabs you by the scruff of the neck. Their music's very short. Their songs are usually under 2 minutes, and it just grabs you, and it just kicks you around for the time that it's on. And look, this album was a continuation. It was the Meteora to the Hybrid Theory. It was more of the same, but just not quite as good for me. The experience of listening to a Nails song is I'm listening to Saint Anger aggressive drumming parts for a minute, the first minute. I can't hear shit. I can't hear what's going on in the slightest, but it's batshit. It's amazing. It's, it's an attack. And then it just goes into one of the coolest riffs you ever hear, if it's good. And it goes into an okay riff, if it's not great. Unsilent Death, I think that was their first album. That one was very much a case of that second half. The riffs were just amazing all the way through. This album, not so much. I just think that they, maybe on the next stuff, I would love to hear them just sharpen up the production a little bit, like let those riffs stand out and be pronounced in the first half. It doesn't need to be a wall of noise into a cool riff every time. And I think that they can do that. If that's the style they want to do, they're one of the best of what I've heard. But I think it does lead. This album just doesn't quite do what Unsilent Death did. I hope it's called Unsilent Death because I'm just calling it that now. Every Bridge Burning, the title track is, I would say, the one to go to for this. I think its second half of the song riff is very, very good, and it was one I was a big fan of. But yeah, give it a go. Give it a go. Absolutely. Everything in this category. Please do give everything here a go. I think it's all worth your time. So a nice natural progression from there. Frontiera, Orange Mathematics. This is very similar to Nails, I would say. A little bit more prog, a little bit more ambitious. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the Nails new album. I don't know if this album is considered a bit of a classic in the space. It's coming up on 10 years old, I believe. I think around 2016 it was released. It's great. It sounds very good. But I think it's a bit long. I think the songs just overstay a little bit. I think I was flagging a little bit by the end of this one. And it wasn't doing a lot song by song to pull me back in. This is probably a one, if I gave it other further listens. I think the thing that really gives away to me an album fatigue when you're listening to it is that your favourite stuff all falls in the first half. And that is very much the case in this album. Digital Tar Pit, absolutely excellent song. Early in the track list. I do think, if I remember correctly, the closer of this album was very, very strong as well. Maybe give that one a go too. But Digital Tar Pit, way worth a go. I don't know too much about Frontiera, but it was a good listen, definitely. So, next up, I had a bit of a family day out on the weekend, so I had a family come up to see me, and my dad bought a copy of Butthole Surfer's PO'd. I'm going to call it PO'd. I've never seen that word in my life. And it was a really good listen. We listened to it. We listened to the record, and I do think I'm a strong supporter of the vinyl scene. We've got a decent number of albums ourselves, and I do think if your first listening to these albums is through record, you'll see the case of that again in the highlights section this week. You get a lot from hearing it in that medium the first time that you might not get if you're just listening to it through Spotify. And it's always good to support these musicians as well. This album, it's they're not a super serious band. There's a lot of the songs have a lot of strange vocal effects on them, and it works to its strength. I think this band, from what I've heard, there's other. I think they've got that song Pepper and a few others that are on the album with the pencil sticking out the ear. One of my favourite album covers. This is not that album. Not as good, and I find these 90s, late 80s, I don't know, I think these started off in the late 80s, I think the album might have come out in the 90s. I like these sort of zany ones that they've managed to keep their place. You've got to respect a band, people buying music from a band from 25, 30 years on from when the album was released. I think that says a lot itself. And I think this was a decent listen. It's not super to my taste, but I think I acknowledge that the quality of it was good. It was a good fun listen. I probably wouldn't return to it. I'd recommend listening to Mr. Gangnam Style's contribution, Psy. There is a song P.S.Y. Give that one a go. There is no Psy on it, unfortunately, although that would have made it probably better than what it is. Please give that one a go. I don't feel like I have too much to say about this one. It wasn't bad. It maybe could have gone into the Lowlights section, I'm not gonna lie. Is it worse than Idols? Maybe not. But I hate Idols, so Idols has to sit down there. Next, the one that I probably have a fair bit to say about. Spiderbait's Tonight All Right. I thought this was really good. It sort of has that them crooked vultures-y, maybe a little bit of Queens of the Stone Age, Spinneret, a few of these other bands, like a real. It's not something I ever really considered to be strongly to my taste. If I'm being honest with you, it's sort of a little bit alt rock. Some bit more, slightly more heavily distorted guitar stuff on there. The riffs do go a little bit. I think they're Australian. Some parts of it, I don't know. Maybe they've never heard of them, but I thought a little bit of Amyl and the Sniffers might have maybe heard some of Spiderbait's music, and I can see a little bit of that in the performances. Amy Taylor, I want to say she's called Amy Taylor. I hope so. I think she might have taken some influence from the singer of Spiderbait. And it was good stuff. The song, You're Fucking Awesome. Fucking awesome. I was a big fan of. It was fun. It was a bit silly, but who doesn't love a bit of silliness sometimes? It was really strong. It was a good strong set of songs. The album wasn't super long. I think it was in the high 30 minutes. It was a good easy listen. It was over very quick in my mind, and that's always a good sign. It's not something that demands too much of your attention when you're listening to it, but I really enjoyed it a lot. I think it's comfortably in this midness category. I'm not too sure how these cuts are coming across. I hope they're not too jarring. I'm using Splice for this. I'm an amateur. I'm a beginner. I'm not going to invest in any superior technology to do any of this stuff until at least I get a couple of views on each of these. I owe it to my maybe 2 or 3 fans, the 2 or 3 people who are going to listen to this one to maybe put more effort into my editing and stuff. But that will come with success. And trust me, I'm not doing this for any reason other than success. Church of Misery, Master of Brutality. I really, really hope that this one would fall into highlights going into it, and it wasn't far off. It's definitely behind the next album, my second favourite of this section. I'm a big fan of Japanese stoner, heavy rock stuff. Heavy rock, speaking of, your likes of your Boris's, your Coltar of the Deepers, Overbright. I want to say they're called Overbright. I don't know. Maybe that's just a song. Search for Overbright. I don't know if that will return an album, a song, or a band. Whoever did that anyway, that is a good song. Or band, or album. Church of Misery. It's I think it's 6 songs. It's styled all out in the as you can probably see if I put the album cover on the screen right now. Styled in that Master of Reality Black Sabbath way, and you can hear the Sabbath influence, of course, as you can on most music that's heavy, but especially here. Each song is named after a serial killer in parentheses at the end of a song title. The best was Ripping Into Pieces. I believe Peter Sutcliffe gets the big shout out on that one. It was great. It was a fantastic album. This one, it was really real pleasure to listen to. Super heavy, really good droney riffs, good strong blues rocks, but sort of sections and a lot of it. It's really worth your time, this one. The album I think is coming up on 25 years old. You'd think it could have been released last week, honestly. I think these guys are considered legends in this part of the music, and on a good day this would definitely be in the highlights section. Give it a go, especially Ripping Into Pieces. It's a fantastic song. And the last album on Much of a Midness, it pains me to say the word mid in the sentence of R.E.M. I'm a huge R.E.M. fan. But what R.E.M are to me, what makes them so good, is also the reason that they're in this category. They're super consistent before anything else. All of their albums probably would fall into this midness category as much as I love them. Aside from maybe a couple, Reckoning, is it Reckoning, I believe, would definitely be in the highlights section there. A couple of the others as well. But this album was good. It's as good as everything else you get with R.E.M. Super strong, good country songs mixed in there, good riff work, great harmonies, backing vocals. I love Michael Stipe's voice. I think he's one of the greatest singers of all time. And the song Driver 8 is definitely one of the best songs I've heard R.E.M. release. I think this fell in that sort of late 80s set of albums before they sort of really hit that mainstream Out of Time. What's the other album? The one with Night Swimming and stuff on it. God, no, it escapes me right now. But that album, Automatic for the People, before they reached that stage of their career. And I do prefer the earlier part of their career, definitely. I think there's so many diamonds in this time of R.E.M's music. And I really would strongly recommend listening to Fables of the Reconstruction, which I don't think I said was the album that I was talking about. Fables of the Reconstruction by R.E.M. is the one I'm talking about. It's excellent. Really good, strong album from front to back. And definitely worth your time. Driver 8, brilliant song. And yeah, that concludes us for Much of a Midness. Not much mid in there. Everything in there. It was a super strong week. I think usually there'll be a few more. I mean, I think if you likened these albums to the pitchfork scale, they would all be sitting in the sevens. You know what I mean? And is 7 mid? Probably not. It's probably a bit above that level. But this week just had such a strong set of highlights that it felt wrong to include much of the stuff that was in with the next 5 that I'm going to talk about. So yeah, let's get into our highlights for this week. The top 5 albums I'll ever talk about so far, if you like. And I'll try and deliver them in the order. I think I've written them out in the order of my least to most favourite of these 5. So we're going to start off with the new R.E.M album, Whole Earth. Myself and my fiancée are going to be going to see R.E.M near us in March of next year. I bought the tickets right before I listened to this album, funnily enough, so I was not swayed by this too much. But if they're going to perform a lot of stuff off this album, I'll be very happy to hear it, because this was a really good album. A bit more feature heavy. I was a huge fan of Mahal. Came out a couple of years ago. That's my favourite of R.E.M's albums, and that was very R&B. And I think that's one of the strongest parts of R.E.M is how. Let's pull out the big one, chameleonic he is. Talking about Chaz Bear specifically, he is the driving creative force behind this band. And Whole Earth is great. It's much less conceptual. It's much more just a collection of music than a true album listening thing to me. I didn't sort of hear too much going on that sort of put a lot of continuity into it as I was going through, but it was great. It was a really good, strong album. I love his voice. The features were really good. He had a couple of Don Toliver features, and he's always impressed me a lot whenever I've heard any of his stuff. And if I was going to be a bit picky, I used to be a massive fan. But my favourite group for a long time was Brockhampton growing up. Back in 2017 when I was in college. I was a big fan of them. And there is a Kevin Abstract feature on the end. I've definitely got a bit of listener fatigue of Kevin Abstract stuff. I really wasn't a huge fan of his album that he released last year, or early this year, one of the two. I can't remember when that exactly came out, but he doesn't add a lot to the song that he's on right towards the end, and the closer I thought was quite weak. But it's such a strong first 3/4 of this album that it really, nothing could throw it off by the end. And really recommend it. Really highly recommend this one for you. Undercurrent, I'd say give that a go. There is a song with smoke in the title. Smoky maybe, I'm not sure. That song as well, please give that one a go too. I think if you listen to both of those one after the other, it will really show off the diversity of this album. So yeah, give that one a go. Next up, we have got Obituaries, Frozen in Time, early 2000s, very, very strong death metal album. I went to Bloodstock this year, as I have the last couple, and we have already secured our tickets for next year, and Obituary will be playing next year, and I'm so excited to see them. They are just, it's kick-ass. I'd never say the word kick-ass ever, but there's no other way to describe Obituary's music. This is the album with Redneck Stomp on it, if anyone's heard of that one. I think they use it as their opener when they play live, and it's just, 3 or 4 minute songs all the way through this of just super thick riff work. Just so good, just such a good band. Everything I've heard by them has just been amazing, and this album was absolutely no different. It was excellent from beginning to end. If you want to, it could be gym music. It can be just sitting around music. Get you need the adrenaline building up. It can be that. If you need to be calmed down, it's slow enough that it can bring that effect as well. I just couldn't pin down the best time to listen to this. I feel like it's just a fantastic album all the way through, and I really strongly recommend that. Mindset, I'd say, would be my standout. Redneck Stomp as well. Give that one a go. Give yourself an intro to Mindset and listen to that. Absolutely, you won't be regretting that at all. You'll be headbanging big time to this one. Next album is one that you will not be headbanging to, and that is Fontaines DC's Romance, newest album out by these guys. I'm glad that I listened to it this week. I think it's been out for a few weeks, but obviously I'm able to talk about it now. I think that Fontaines DC needed this move in this direction. I think some conversation online has been that it's a little bit light. They've moved away from that sort of edgier, punkier sound that they had coming through. That post-punk, if you like. See, my fiance is a big fan of the Murder Capital, and says that they had very similar sounds coming through. But again, Glastonbury. It was when you see these bands play live, you get a lot from it. And I think when I watched them performing at Glastonbury, you could see that they just want to be stars. And I think to do that, they've got the ear for it. They've got the talent to perform these poppier sounding songs, and I'm really happy that they've gone in this direction, because it didn't do so much for me, their earlier work, and as they've lightened up, that Skinty Fear, if that's how you might say it, is what I thought was a really good step in the right direction, and this album just takes it to that next level. There are dark moments on it, and he's Graham Chatton's just such a talented and I don't know, what's the best word for him? He's such an expressive vocalist that, everything they release has that edge on anyone else who's making music in the same style, because they've got him as a vocalist. And I just thought that this album just has so many great songs sprinkled into the track list that you really can't get much better than this for this poppier rock, alternative rock movement. So please give that one a go. I could recommend everything from this. Death Kink was probably my favourite. Was a fantastic closer. What's our other good one? All of it. Here's the thing, all of them are worth a listen. Please give this one a full listen. It's a 36, 37 minute album as well, so what you're losing by listening to this one. Next up, we have one of my all-time favourite musicians, Elliott Smith, New Moon, compilation release, posthumous release. It might be very poetic to have him here and have Kurt Cobain in the Lowlights section. Elliott Smith is just one of my favourite musicians, songwriters, performers ever. There's no music that he's ever released I've ever heard that I dislike, and this compilation is a really good comprehensive listen, I think, because there is obviously figure 8 material on there. It goes all the way through to his final release. They've compiled some of that. But there's a lot of things from that early phase, the self-titled Roman Candle, Either Or recordings, and everything he wrote was just, it had some gold in it. And I think that for the number of songs that are on this, there could easily have been Lowlights. And don't get me wrong, there are a couple of songs that aren't probably realised enough to have released them, but given how stripped back his style was, even something like this of the incomplete music has a complete feeling to it because it's not too far off what he did release. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the things off EXO and the self-titled, all of those, all that kind of stuff, either or as well. A lot of the songs are acoustic. I mean, you've even got songs in his discography that are vocals only. It's not like he was a super layered instrumentalist or anything like that. He was just a really talented songwriter and guitarist. And I think you can't go wrong by giving a listen to the material of New Moon. I would even recommend New Moon as a gateway for a lot of people who haven't listened to any Elliott Smith, because you do get that career spanning idea of it. And if there's stuff that you like more than others on this, seek out the albums that he was probably recording that music for. It's a win-win. Because if there's a person who I'd recommend the discography of to somebody, I would say it's Elliott Smith. Really fantastic stuff. And drum roll, please, for our album of the week, our debut album of the week. We have got Days Before Rodeo, Travis Scott. And I would not have ever thought that if I was to say there's a Tori Moi, an Obituary, an Elliott Smith album in my highlights on week 1, that Travis Scott would take number 1. But here we are. Days Before Rodeo is the mixtape he released before the full release of the album Rodeo. The first full, I think it was his first full length album. He had that Al Faro mixtape and a couple of other early bits. And Rodeo is a classic in itself, But Days Before Rodeo, it's a sister album. There's so many of the ideas that are on here were also on Rodeo. Clearly, it was the material he was looking at making at the time. And Days Before Rodeo was just such a good listen. I used to be a big fan of sort of the trap style music stuff when I was growing up. It was it was on the charts, wasn't it? We had all the Post Malone stuff and the French Montana features and the Sway Lee and all that stuff was all over the charts. Migos, all that. Migos are on this album as well. And it was, it's got nostalgic qualities to me. It's probably part of the reason I enjoyed it so much. But some of the songs and Travis Scott's production's always been what keeps him at the top of his game. Top of the rap, top of the list of names of rappers that most people would know of. And it's continued on. Even the stuff. Obviously, I think unanimously we can say that Birds in the Trap is not his finest hour, but Utopia was a fantastic album last year. I was a big fan of Astro World. Rodeo's excellent, and this is only, I'd say, to me, behind Rodeo in quality of everything he's ever released. And I can't say enough nice things about this. The production is fantastic. The features are all really good. A lot of the people he picked to be features on this have ended up having good long careers. So there's not a lot of poor quality in his collaborators on this, and that adds a lot. Sometimes when you come across these older trap albums and you come across a feature and you're like, oh, God, they were around, or they were big enough to be making music with this person, and you don't get that with any of this stuff. Amazing, absolutely amazing album. Skyfall, probably one of his best songs. Backyard's fantastic. I think Zombies was very good. This has had its release. It's streaming release for the first time very recently. It was always just a YouTube find back in the day. Very well known, very popular, and obviously widely spread around. And there was a lot of singles on there as well that did have official releases. But I think take the opportunity to listen to it in a slightly higher quality form than it ever was available before. And enjoy it. Travis Scott, Days Before Rodeo's album of the week. So there we have it. Lowlights, highlights, Much of a Midness, Ultravox Vienna, worst album, Travis Scott, best album. I hope you all enjoyed giving this a listen. Hopefully I'll be back again next week with another very high quality set of albums as it was this week. And like I say, give everything a go. I don't think there's anything really across any of these three categories aside from maybe the Ultravox that you won't get something from. And even the Ultravox, give the Ultravox a go. I'm not going to single them out. But yeah, thanks very much for listening. And we'll be back next week, same time, with week 2 of the Weekly Waves.